up, guys? On today's episode, we interview an author. I don't know what to do with my hands. The author is G Michael Hopf. He writes... Dave?
He actually didn't write me in, but he writes post-apocalyptic, dystopian,
Fact meets fiction.
science fiction, awesome stuff. No, he's an awesome guy, man.
He is an awesome guy.
It's a great. I like
whether you like his writing or not.
for sure. He's a down to earth feller.
And we interview him for a while.
I love him so much.
And I miss him already.
I love you. So sweet. His skin's so soft.
You hear that? What? You hear that? Move. You hear that? What? You hear that? Move. You hear that? What? You hear that? Oh yeah, it's your boy.
I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Can you hear us?
I can.
Wow.
Can you see us?
Make sure you're talking into your mic.
Yeah, I can see the wall. Yeah,
How about now?
and I see a picture of this gorgeous guy.
Are you recording this?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So we did. I mean, can you video, or you don't want to do that right now?
Oh no, I'm kind of all no.
Okay.
No, in the video.
Okay. So we're just gonna set your picture here so that we can know who. Like, we just like to look at you.
Oh yeah.
I can understand that. It happens all the time.
So what we've got going on, just to explain this to you, is first of all, let's just be honest. We're complete hacks.
Oh yeah. There's no doubt.
We're on a shoestring budget with our podcast, and so the last time we did this interview with you, we ended up having your Skype video, but none of the audio came through. So even though we heard you live, none of it recorded. So it was basically unusable. Although it could be used as just a visual aid of, beautiful art in motion.
So that would be funny. It'd almost be like this kind of like, it would be almost like those old kung fu movies where I'd be talking to this one you're recording, and then the video to the other one, that won't line up.
Yeah, we're going to try to splice you in right now.
So what we've got right now is literally a microphone sitting on top of a MacBook Air, picking up your audio from Skype.
We're pretty high speed.
So
let's be honest.
We figured out a workaround. It's essentially, when you really think about it, what we're doing right now is more complex than bringing back Apollo 13 from the moon.
Oh, there's no doubt.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
There's more computing power going into this podcast than literally bringing back humans from outer space.
It's what we do.
It's science. How you been, brother?
Good, man. Really good. You guys?
Well,
Good. So G Michael Hopf is on the line.
on the pod, not
On the pod-
video caster.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Whatever. Yeah, you get the idea.
Hey, Mike, how was that? How was that like ghost pepper you ate? I saw something. You were eating some ghost peppers or something like that.
I ate the world's
What
hottest
kind of
chocolate
peppers?
bar from VAT 19, and
Okay.
it was really hot. I could have done better. I feel like I needed to just push through part of the pain, and I could have just, burned through it. But
Hey, gee, don't you think he was a bit of a Nancy? Everybody else took at least two more. I don't know, whatever that dude's name is. He coughed down the whole. I don't know what he was thinking. You were definitely smarter than him, but you were still a Nancy.
Oh, the guy who threw it up in the trash can.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Good Lord, right?
so the next thing I have coming up is I have these sitting at home. They're called Moab chocolate bars, the mother of all bars, right? It's a half-pound chocolate bar that has crushed up Carolina Reapers in it with a layer of caramel through it that has scorpion peppers crushed up in it.
Oh my gosh. No.
And the goal is to who can eat the half-pound bar fastest. The world record is 6 minutes and something by Johnny Scoville or something like that. So we're going to, but I'm going to do a police versus fire.
Half-pound.
It's a half-pound, dude. So it's and you can only have beer or water during the challenge while you're eating it. You can't alleviate your
Oh
milk.
my gosh.
That's the rules of the challenge. So we're gonna do the guy Big Rob, who took it like a champ, right?
Oh, yeah,
he
he did.
barely broke a sweat. He's going to go against a firefighter. See if the firefighter can quote unquote take the heat.
Oh, good Lord, here we go.
Oh yeah.
Love it.
So since
I can't imagine what it's like the next day when you're sitting on the John, man.
volcanic. So I'm hoping. I don't know if you can hear this. I want we do the typical uncorking of the bourbon. So stand by. There it is.
There it is.
I don't. Do you? We're gonna set the bottle by you in honor of you. I feel like we have a memorial, like a shrine to G Michael Hopf right now.
We actually do. It's a nice picture. It's like the Google image picture. You're all happy. You got your typical writer's garb going on. The nice jacket with blue, like fresh blue
there should be
jeans
candles, but I'm not pouring one out for my homie per se. But I am pouring bourbon right now.
I have the camera angle that.
Nice.
So you can show the picture of him.
I can. Oh, well, yeah. This is what we have sitting up against the computer here.
He's a beautiful man.
Yeah, he's a beautiful specimen.
God.
Listen, I don't butter my bread on that side, but
I would do that guy.
I'm gonna. Yeah, like I said, I don't butter my bread on that side, but if I did, you know, that's kind of like OJ's. I didn't do it, but if I did. Speaking of books, see, I'm so good at these transitions.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
There's this one shirt I saw this guy was wearing. He goes, I'm not gay, but a 20 is a 20.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So yeah, I'll use my magical transition to talk about the books. I regret that we ended up not having super functional audio on the last interview.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
we're not as much in a rush now anyway. We can kind of just like roll with it. And so for those of you that are not familiar with G Michael Hopf, he is an author. And you can get his stuff on Amazon. You have a .com right there, right?
Yeah, you can also like order autographed copies at gmichaelhopf.com as well. And like the books, the first 4 books in my New World series are through Penguin Random House, and so you can get those at Barnes and Noble. At any physical Barnes and Noble inside their store. So the distribution is pretty wide.
Cool. I'm gonna put a link on our YouTube and to our Patreon subscribers. I'll put a link to your .com plus a link to your author, a list of your books on Amazon as well, so that as through this interview, if they get interested in wanting to explore that your genre, your particular writing, then they can dive in with you, which I did. I dove in with Day of Reckoning, and read that. It's kind of scary because I think I was headed out west, and it's sort of set in San Diego. And I was like, man, when I land, I think this
is how it's going down.
I think this biological weapons. I need to be ready. I need to be ready when we land. I need to be ready if the pilot opens up and things have changed up there. I don't obviously want to give the book away or give the nature of it all away. What would you want to tell people? I want to interact with you a little bit about my experience with your book and your writing, but what would you want to tell people about Day of Reckoning? Publicly, that isn't going to give away what you don't want given away ahead of time.
Well, essentially, Day of Reckoning is the origin of it is 2 books that I actually kind of thought that they could be melted into one, and but it's basically in a nutshell follows a terrorist plot and conspiracy to destroy Western civilization. That's kind of what it is, and you as the reader are kind of witnessing it through. You see, I use a lot of like media reports. So you're having the characters are hearing the media or watching the media, or hearing the media or watching the media talk about certain incidences that are happening in their real time, and that's all playing into kind of this grander conspiracy that ends up folding out on the Day of Reckoning. Right.
Yeah, I was drawn into it. I was telling Dave, it was what wasn't there that kept me wanting more. I feel like you could do prequels to that, sequels to that, a side angle from a different character story. Like there's so much that was there that the storyline really could sustain a bunch. So I applaud you for the making me want more.
Oh, good. I'm glad you liked it. The people have asked if I'm doing a sequel, and I don't plan on any sequel for that book. And it's really more about that day.
Yeah,
it's about just I want the readers to kind of figure out what happens. Does past that day specifically. You're giving kind of an inkling, as you know, at the end, as it's a couple weeks kind of after when that one character, with that one character you see him, but it's more about, do you think what happens? I really want the readers to kind of figure that out.
Yeah.
Well, on their own. But and again, it's really, but basically, it's as I'm writing, the reason I wrote it is kind of speaks to the apathy we have as a society, and the why we see this now as the attacks on kind of our own culture. You see that, and there's a little bit of that played out there. The attacks on kind of just law and order. There's a lot of kind of underlying points that I make in the book, and again, but it really kind of plays to the apathy that I think is happening in our own society today. That could lead us to something that's a dynamic attack that's horrific like that. Specifically, the one where the one character is dealing with at the school.
Yes.
That definitely something that could be played out, and it would be horrific.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Law and Order, and that's exactly sort of like the feel I got from your book, which was like, this is fact meets fiction, right? Where this is all stuff that's sort of like, as they say, ripped from the headlines. Like it's stuff that's going on out in the world that you're putting a fictional sort of storyline with it. But you look at this and go, this could be real. I mentioned to Dave can I say a character's name or no?
Yeah, go ahead, please. Yeah.
So the Jorge Sorosi.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that seems to be a very clear parallel ripped from the headlines, right? Like, I saw that name at first, and when the character is first introduced, you don't connect all those dots. Sort of like kind of, you start picking up on this, and you're like, holy crap, I know exactly who this reminds me of, right? So, is that you did that on purpose? I take it.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Because in real life, I think there is a direct connection between organizations like that individual has that are tied to leftist organizations, that are hell bent on breaking down our law and order, breaking down our system. I think they're actually, as well as terrorist organizations. I think it's been proven. There's people out there that can show the connections to all of it. You have there's connections now that got characters obviously like a George Soros kind of a character, and his funding of like Antifa types. And then now there's the FBI's can come out, and you guys probably know this better than me, now connecting Antifa with ISIS.
Really?
And some of their leaders linking up and meeting with ISIS and Al-Qaeda people to learn tactics and so forth like that. So I think there's not much of a separation between all those entities.
Yeah.
And they all have one goal in mind, and that is the destruction of our system as we know it.
Well, let me ask two questions. The first is, because I haven't read that book, do you have an actual ending for it that's in your mind? That apparently it seems to be that it's a novel base. It's got a definite time period, and then there's like this. Again, I haven't read it, but like this lingering end. Do you have an end for it that's in your mind, but you kind of want people to figure it out, and that's kind of the fun of the whole thing? I don't. I legitimately want the reader to kind of figure out what they think could actually happen. Nice. I think that's cool.
I'm more of a doom and gloom kind of a guy. I mean, I write apocalyptic fiction, so.
Right.
But I wanted the readers to think if people are going to know literally with the name Day of Reckoning that some bad shit happens.
Right.
But I want the reader to be left with the situation that could be hopeful or not be hopeful. And you're definitely left there, that it could go in either direction.
Okay. Second question. Regarding like names of characters. I always think that's kind of interesting. Like obviously there was a parallel to certain characters, but how do you go about like when you think of you think of characters, do you think basically, I think of storylines, and then I think, well, characters have to follow into a storyline, or do you think sometimes, well, I have this character that I love, or the idea, and I'm going to fit a storyline into that? How do you normally do that, or do you kind of do both?
It's mainly about the storyline that I want to tell. and then I just start, then I create the kind of the character that the protagonist or the antagonist that I think would fit into that. Mm-hmm. But I like to tell the books I write are telling human struggle. There's and conflict, but also decision making, and a lot of in all the books I write, there's a lot of that's at play, and the characters are left with the decision that if you go left, someone dies. If you go right, someone dies. Which way you're going to go? You only have two choices, and so they're left with making a decision. One sucks, and the other is suckier. And but there's no
story of my life.
Sometimes there's no right or wrong. There's just trying to make a decision. And I've been like in the first book I ever wrote, The End. There's a decision a character makes, and I've gotten a lot of like bad, emails over, a lot of hate coming my way because of it. But if you've ever been, and you guys have been in situations where you have to make a decision, you don't have all the time in the world to sit there and make a decision. You just have to make it, and it's down to split seconds. And sometimes you act, and that character acted, and I've always defended it. It's like, listen, I'm not saying it's right. He made it because of all these other circumstances that are playing out around him. He doesn't have the benefit of sitting behind a book reading it. The character doesn't. Just like what you guys have done, being police officers, sometimes you're presented with a situation, you just have to do it, because waiting can be even worse.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And so that's where I like to pose situations, and so I'm more about having a narrative and then having the characters that kind of fit into that.
Well,
I'm not sure if that answers the question.
No, it does. I actually love that idea, because what you're basically doing is you're creating an environment, which is usually pretty downtrodden and horrible. And then you've created this environment, and now you're throwing characters into it, and they have to somehow react to it. And I think that's I like the concept of that, instead of maybe just having a character that you like, or, hey, I really want this character to do this, and now I'll build a world around him. You've created a world just like the world we live in now. It already exists in the way it is. So how are we going to, how are people going to interact? How are we going to react to the situation at hand? So I think it's kind of cool. So,
yeah.
Something too, and this is something I think is lost on the protected classes, and that's just pretty much the rest of society that doesn't have to go out into the real world and face bad guys. They, in the books, my characters are really only dealing with stuff that you guys might deal with on a daily basis. Where you're having to go toe to toe with somebody that's meaning to do, the general population harm or you harm. And so the situations really, they're not outlandish, they're not fictional. These are situations that soldiers and Marines are facing in the battlefields every day, or police officers are facing on the streets of America. So, again, you're just coming up against people that have intent to harm, and then you didn't have to make a decision on how you're going to deal with that individual or individuals.
Yeah, I dig it. What's the latest book that you have? A new one that just came out, correct?
Yeah, it's called Driver 8.
So tell us about that one.
Driver 8, I actually really love this book a lot. Driver 8 essentially is a true post-apocalyptic book in the vein of kind of an Alas Babylon, kind of a classical post-apocalyptic, where you're 19 years post a nuclear holocaust. So the prologue starts, you're kind of in the present day, and this is where you're introduced to the main character. He's a LAPD detective. And you're introduced to him, and then all hell breaks loose. And then you're transported 19. Then chapter 1 is essentially 19 years after, and he's now on the road as a driver for a new society that's kind of blossomed out of kind of the ashes, called the Collective. And the Collective is essentially kind of a George Orwellian type of society. Where everything's based upon the many and individualism is looked down upon. And everyone has to be productive. If you're not productive, you're cast out. And so it's
just like Dave. It's just like Dave. I'm getting rid of him on the podcast.
Go ahead.
I said it's just like Dave. I'm getting rid of him on the podcast because he's unproductive.
Story of my life. That's what my wife's doing to me too. Squeezing me out.
Continue.
But it's kind of a Mad Max meets kind of Book of Eli meets The Road, and those are kind of people are into the genre will be familiar with those stories. It's
seen
kind
all
of
those
all
movies.
those, kind of a mashup of all those. So it's our hero is definitely a hero, but he has a little anti-hero kind of elements to him as well. I have scenes in there he does some stuff that could be questionable, but he's definitely at his heart at his core is a good man. And then you have a antagonist, or several of them, which definitely are your typical kind of bad guys. And he's just kind of driving the barren roads of kind of the apocalypse, kind of doing what he needs to do. It's a really solid book.
Well, I like that you say that, because actually that sounds kind of like a more interesting version of 1984 in its own kind of weird way. Like I said, I mean, I haven't read the book, but where I read 1984, I read it again recently.
Did you really?
Nice. I liked the book, but I thought it was written a little while ago, so which I actually generally really enjoy that. But I found that it was there was certain parts that were not outdated, but that weren't as interesting as they could be, because there were some the concepts were fantastic, but kind of how, to me, the presentation wasn't up to the par that I was expecting out of a classic. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about that, it actually interests, because I'm a post-apocalyptic guy. I really like that stuff. So when you talk about like that, I kind of, it intrigues me. It's kind of, I said, Orwell meets
It's what I always think
Mad
about
Max.
you, Dave.
I love that.
I just look at you and you scream post-apocalyptic. Mostly because you look like you went through a nuclear holocaust.
Well, it's see, this is what I have to deal with every day, practically. He'll call me at 4 a.m. just to yell at me.
So with all this genre, right? So when I first got introduced to you through Jake and Leviathan Group and all that, he was talking about the idea of being a prepper, the prepping type community, and Dave here is. Are you a prepper, Dave?
I wouldn't call myself a hardcore prepper by any means, but
so he addresses this in Day of Reckoning, right? Like the idea of there's a difference between being a prepper and being prepared.
Yeah,
right.
Let's just say I would be okay. And this is the way I've always looked at it. As far as being a prepper, I would be okay for 2 months without any problem, and then after that, if things aren't cleared up by then, then I will definitely be okay for the rest of my life, because you just make it happen, right?
Oh yeah, you're saying so through your skill set, you'd be okay
then,
beyond.
Yeah. So I want to be good for 2 months, and then after that, you'll already have an idea of how good or how bad things are going, and so then you make the rest work.
So what do you think, G, as far as like prepping goes versus being prepared? Like, is there a line that's kind of odd to cross, or where do you fit in with all that?
It's always interesting when people label themselves as survivalist or preppers, quote unquote preppers. There's always this kind of connotation that kind of goes with it, the people that aren't, right? Mm-hmm. And I look at myself as being prepared. That's how I define myself. I don't naturally live a life that would be defined by people as preppers. I don't live on a farm. I don't have goats. I don't have all these kind of things. Right. But am I prepared? Yes. And going back to what Dave was talking about, I'm coming along that same vein, and that is. But your thing is also about skill sets and also mindset. What you were talking about there is having a mindset for survival. Mm-hmm. You might run out of resources, but then your skill sets, your abilities, and your mindset will come to play, and you'll gather more. And by the way, I think those are the most important thing than resources, because those three things can't be taken away from you. Your mindset can never be taken away from you. Your abilities, that's kind of your fitness, ability to be able to handle yourself, can never be taken away from you from somebody else. And your skill sets can never be taken away. Resources always can. I tell this to people all the time when they think being prepared means just buying a bunch of food and buying a bunch of other shit like that and just having tons of gear. And then guess what? You could listen. There's no schedule when shit's going to go down.
Yeah,
you may not even be home. And then what are you going to do then? You don't have your stuff with you, and then people are like, well, carry this with you everywhere you go. You just don't know. And planning that you have to be with your gear, and then you'll let your ability go, or you'll let your skill sets kind of lag, that's more detrimental than anything else. And again, those are the biggest things ever. I've seen people that have more shit than ever, and then they're obese.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
Really? What are you gonna do with that? I mean, seriously?
Well, they'll lose weight really fast after a little while.
Yeah, they're gonna eat me.
Well, let me just say this. My wife's always like, she's like the wife in The Road. She's like, Dave, if this ever happened, just let me die. Just let me die. I'm like, are you out of your mind? We got to keep going, man. We could go forever. She's like, I don't want to go forever. Just let me die. I'm like, no. You're going to live forever, and you're going to like it. You know?
Like it.
That's how we've gotten into that conversation, if that helps you, my mindset. So
I definitely feel like there's a lot of me I'm prepared for certain things. Like, I think we had that, I was just thinking Sunday morning. I went to church Sunday morning. I was just thinking, and I think I do this on a regular basis. As I was just walking through the building, what would happen if an attack happened in this room right now? Mm-hmm. What would happen if an attack happened over here? Where would I go to? How would I handle that? Like, I run these scenarios in my head all constantly. The time, right?
I bet, you probably do the same thing. You're a military man, right? You probably still do that.
Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about.
Then we come home to the news that somebody went into a church in Texas, and started shooting, and I'm thinking, holy crap! Like, parts of me feels like, am I weird for thinking that I should be prepared for these situations? Like, I literally think, okay, which side should I have my knife on if I'm doing this activity? Like little things like that.
You're only insane until it happens,
right? And then all of a sudden, like, I just told my wife, like, we need assault rifles at the church. Like, they should have a place to access those in the event that something like this happens, And normal people would think, and I shouldn't say normal because I feel like I'm a normal dude for the most part. But I mean, I have my odd proclivities. Don't talk to me about ducks. That's a whole other game. But the idea that most people would think, man, isn't that a little extreme? And you touch on this in Day of Reckoning with the husband and wife duo there. Like, the wife sort of has this, I get it, you want to be safe, but aren't you being a little crazy?
And that is a reality, right?
But the reality is, I just came home and turned on the news and saw that people were killed by a dude that just decided, hey, here's a soft target.
Yeah.
Well, it's happening now, not just in big cities. So you had the guy driving over people in Manhattan.
Yep.
And then a week later, some guy goes into an incredibly rural town in South Texas.
Yeah.
So you couldn't have the polar opposites from a rural town to a metropolis, and you're having these people are being attacked.
Yeah.
So I think what we're kind of seeing this. I don't know if it's more of an increase. It feels like that, right? But it has to be more of an increase in these kind of events. That's if you're not thinking about it, I think that's not normal.
Yeah, I think I mean I agree anyway, because I just have that mindset.
But see, I don't have food. I don't really have like a
what a nerd, right, G?
Gosh, don't shame me.
You're doing things right when somebody goes, "Hey, dude, if the shit goes down, can I come to your place?" Yeah. That's how you're doing good.
Yeah, and I'm going to your place. Like I do know, like there's a depot, like actually not far from here. It's literally probably less than a mile from here that there's food and some ammunition that we can get.
See?
And vehicles.
We're already thinking.
I know where to go. I need to get there.
Yeah, see?
That's where I got to go.
So you're going to turn into a marauder.
Yeah.
You're going to steal a bunch of shit.
Yeah, basically that's exactly what he's going to do.
I'm essentially, what's his name? Oh, Mel Gibson. Yes, I'm Mel Gibson.
Patriot.
In The Patriot, in Mad Max.
Max. Oh, yeah, you're just
in Braveheart.
Yeah.
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 I'm not racist, but
you're
I'm
Mad
awesome.
Mike. Got it.
I look as good, but I just have a different name.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Can I ask you a question about, okay, so I know there's probably a lot of like I like to like dabble in writing, okay, and I'm sure you hear that all the time. But so that like writing fascinates me. So I think there's probably going to be a lot of people that are listening because you're a successful writer and the things that you've done were successful. And I know that we talked last time and you're like, dude, I have no idea what happened. It just, boom, it blew up and I'm glad it did. And I've been working real hard ever since, right? And so can you tell us a little bit about your first book, kind of how it caught on, and that, because I know, like I said, we talked about this before, and I guess we're kind of acting as if like, oh, everybody knows G. We talked to him for an hour, you know. So can you tell us a little bit about how you started?
I'd always I've always been a big reader, so I've been a big fan of the genre specifically, post-apocalyptic, dystopian, sci-fi, all of that. I love all that stuff, whether it's movies, books. But I've been a big reader, and I was always looking for something that I felt missing in the books I was reading. And so that's why, and I've also dabbled in writing too. I was dabbling in writing at the time, and specifically when I was, younger and while I was in the Marine Corps. Anyway, so this was back in 2012. I was just like, I really kind of would want this one storyline to be really cool. And then I just had this idea, why don't I just write it myself? And before I just, presented to my wife, who would have just rolled her eyes and told me to shut up and get back to work, I decided to knock out a few chapters to see if I could do it and prove to myself could I actually do it. And it actually read decently. And then I presented it to her, and she read it and was like, wow. Oh yeah, please go finish this book, but at nighttime, continue working. So
after you take out the garbage.
So that's what I did. I sat for about a year straight. I just hammered out the book at night, and the long story short, I had an agent. I thought I was going to go the mainstream route at the time. It didn't work. She was too slow. I fired her, and then I self-published it. And it languished for about 10 days on Amazon, just kind of doing 10, 15 sales a day. Mm-hmm. And then I woke up one day and it just had taken off.
Well, did it surprise you that you were getting 10 or 15? Like, I think it would surprise, if I put a book out and I just threw it on, on something, I think I'd be like, well, somebody bought like 5 books.
You'd like take the one sale and frame it. You'd print out the invoice and put it behind you.
Frames the dollar bill. Like, I'd be like, what?
Right.
Did that surprise you? And then all of a sudden, and of course, when it took off, I'm sure you were like, oh, absolutely, this is awesome. But did it like start surprising you when people were buying your book? Like, oh my gosh, I can't even believe it,
Yeah, I mean, when it's your first book, you're like, it's a mix of shock and fear and excitement.
Yeah, I guess, right?
Because, the fear is like, oh shit, now I'm open for judgment now because everyone's a fucking critic, right? So
I would have changed that sentence.
What's that?
I would have changed that sentence.
Exactly. I can't believe he put that in there. That's cool. It was kind of a mix of that. And then when it took off, I was kind of skeptical at first. I thought maybe it was some kind of weird thing that was happening. So I kind of tempered my excitement after I just jumped around the house like a Mexican jumping bean all over the place. And I'd be like, wait a minute, hold on. Let's just see if this lasts. If this sustains itself, then we're maybe on to something. And it did. It just never stopped. And I then presented my wife with an option. When it was doing so well, I knew there was one shot to get a sequel out, and I couldn't wait 18 months to do it because I think just people are fickle. Mm-hmm. And I said, listen, I can't work and do this at night. I said, I need to hammer this out like quick. And she hesitated at first, and then I showed her what we were earning. So she goes, absolutely, go ahead. And
I'm going to go shopping.
That's great.
I'm going to go shopping now.
Yeah. But she'll tell you it's not about money. It's not about money.
Of course
not.
Right? Never is. Never is.
Of course, it never is, yeah. And so I did. I just sat down in May of 2013 and started writing it, and I released it at the end of August, the sequel.
May, June. So it was like 4 or 5 months?
And just before that, so I had it up for pre-order, and it hit #1 in pre-order.
Dang,
wow.
It was just crushing it. The Long Road's the sequel to the end, and it was just doing incredibly well. And that's when I got the phone call. I was getting phone calls from different publishers, different agents wanting to rep me. And then the big call came in from Penguin Random House. They called me. I didn't solicit them. They actually called me. And they had seen the end. They'd seen how well it was doing. They were tracking how well the Long Road was doing. And they wanted to sign me for a 4-book deal.
Well, did they know, like, As that happens, so a big company calls you like that. Are they trying to at that point you already have a book or two? At that point, 2 books, right? Out.
Yeah.
Okay, so are they trying to also market those first 2, or they're like, okay, well, let's see if we can get the rest of these and try to get these out there for him too?
They wanted all of them, including the first 2, because they wanted to control it.
Yeah.
And what essentially they're buying is they're buying my fan base is what they're doing. About that time I was establishing a fan base. I'd sold hundreds of thousands of copies at the time, and so what they were looking at was like they wanted Hitch a Ride, right? And,
Okay, yeah.
What's interesting is there's 2 ways of getting published with the mainstream publisher. That is to have an agent and kind of go that route, or they literally go on Amazon themselves. Amazon is the big 800-pound gorilla in the room when it comes to self-publishing, and they actually track indies on Amazon. They watch the ranking systems, and they look at who's represented and who's not. And when they see someone doing extremely well, they pick up the phone and try to sign them. And the reason is that they believe it's the best way to find new talent without taking the risk.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because the person's already selling, so that risk has been removed for them. When you're just a new author with the only person who's read your book is your family, and then your agent. Your agent is going to go in there and say you're the best thing since Stephen King. They don't know whether that's actually going to relate to consumers actually buying it.
Yeah.
What a successful indie shows is the most important thing. It actually sells. There's a fan base being established, and so that's a better route for them to find. And that's how they found me.
Are you still with a publisher today?
Scouring Amazon product pages.
So are you still with a publisher, or are you done with that? You've kind of gone back to the original roots. Are you still with a publisher or no?
I'm not. No, that book deal ended, and I was happy to be out of it.
Okay.
I'm kind of a control freak, and I didn't like that the control over a lot of things was handed over to them. It was great at the time; it sounded awesome. I felt like I could legitimately call myself a real writer because I was under the biggest publishing house in the world. But so with that done, I make more money, have more control, more creative control, more control over my content as an independent writer.
Yeah, I think the whole world is changing. I have published a book on Kindle and in paperback. It's like an edited storybook of you can't make this stuff up. It's a cop book, like just funny cop stories. Short. It's like 40-some pages. So that experience was cool to go through. I'm not really an author, but what I do is mostly video stuff, and I have dabbled in. I signed with a company to market me to networks for a TV show, and I'm less excited about that. The only thing that would give me is exposure, because really YouTube or Facebook or my own website, I can drive my own content, being completely in charge of what I want to do creatively. The only thing limiting me is my own driver determination. It's not ratings. It's not whether or not there's enough money in it or anything else like that. And really, when it comes down to money, when you look at contracts, what they would sign you for to get a pilot or to have a show on like cable TV, you could make more money on YouTube revenue or other avenues of like merchandising or something else off of your own stuff than what you can in the traditional form. So I think they're struggling to keep up.
It's changing for sure.
Oh no, there's a revolution happening in all media, whether it's music. You see it a lot in music now, and definitely in print, but also in television. Just the way television is being consumed. Most people stream television.
Oh yeah.
Anymore than they, and I think the days of cable. Me and my wife were having a conversation about this a couple weeks ago. That I think the days of cable are, in sight. Like, we can start to see
I'm surprised it's still around.
Unbundle and fall apart in the next decade or so.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely.
But there are people who still talk on landlines too.
Yeah.
Like, hello, Doris.
It's got to be like a 70-year-old
Hello,
lady.
Doris. Did you hear what Martha did? Oh my gosh.
Why?
That's still happening somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere Doris has a rotary dial phone. Right?
Still the
Yes.
rotary dial.
Flicking the dials, like absolutely.
Like Doris, you realize they'd have why it's not broken. Why fix it?
That's right.
It's not broken. Yeah, I can't see the numbers on those things. I got the jitterbug, but I still can't see it.
The jitterbug. Well, I have another question, and maybe you've had this, maybe not, but can you look back on a negative review or a criticism of one of your writings, whatever writing it is? It could have been an early writing, it could have been a novel, it could be your latest one, where you originally were like, fuck that person, man, that guy didn't know me at all. But then later you were like, you know what, that person's right. And maybe, like, was there ever a criticism that you actually learned a lot from, would you say?
No, of course. Specifically, I don't look at one. I'll read 1-star reviews when they come in now and then.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily think that some of them that can provide good constructive criticism, and mainly if they find something that's technically wrong, then I'm all ears. You know, like, if you found something technically wrong, I'm Johnny on the spot, and I'd like to fix that.
I see.
But someone wants to go in there and just bitch and complain.
Right.
I'm like, I disagree. By the way, I rarely ever reply to a 1-star review. Rarely, really rarely.
We just got our first 1-star review on our podcast.
Really?
Yep, Ranger 1029.
Was it constructive?
That
or was
bastard.
He whining like a little bitch?
Well, it wasn't, but it was kind of like a mixture. I think, like, he wanted us to be serious.
He wanted us to be more serious. Talk serious stuff.
Yeah, so whatever that means, you know.
Well, but sometimes what I told somebody one time is when I did reply, I was like, and I replied, and then like later my wife's like, maybe we should take that down. We should stay on the high ground. And I pretty much told the guys, like, you don't like the book because the criticism had nothing to do with the technical side of it. We just didn't like the story. It was just complaining that I thought the hero could have been more like this, and you should have. I was like, maybe you should write your own fucking book, and then your hero can do all those things you said my hero should do.
Well,
my wife's like, maybe, and I did delete it because I was like, yeah, you're right. I don't want to because then I'm kind of getting down on their level, and it's just like, why even bother? But now I pretty much never reply to them.
Well, I can't
unless they say something they've gotten nasty before. Like I've been called all kind of series of names before.
Oh, I bet.
And then I'll just say, I'm sorry you think that I'm a racist pig. Just whatever. But I don't get into name calling and things like that. But you'll be amazed, man. Just as like the podcast grows, or as you guys write future books and things like that, there's I always call them the 10%. People just want to just get on there and rage.
We actually make a big thing out of it on the podcast because we get that, and it's usually like the same 3 people. Like there
are some people
complaining
like
about
I even tell these people, you do understand that by watching my video and by commenting, you're actually helping this to grow.
Yeah, and
you do understand that.
They just keep going.
They just keep coming back. Keep coming back.
Well, and I wouldn't expect that that you would take your advice from somebody who actually leaves a review on Amazon anyway. I suppose like because it's any random human being. But maybe at some point maybe an old professor or maybe an old mentor, somebody in the military, maybe that you looked up to is like, hey, you know what? I love your writing. I just, if you did this, or hey, you know what? I love what you're doing. If you didn't do this, and then you're like, you know what? I think you're right. And then all of a sudden you become this well-rounded writer, and that's what helped you write your first book. I didn't know if there was that guy.
No, I've actually had those, but they're not. They hasn't have been reviews. I'll get emails from people, and they'll spot something. And they, like recently, I had some like the book Mother. I did that little horror novella, and there was some formatting issues that got messed up, and the formatting was like how the paragraph breaks happen in a few places. And this person sent a Facebook message to me. Sweet, as a sweet woman, just said, I just want to let you know the book is amazing, the story's great, it's all this flowery stuff, but there is this kind of you got some flow issues happening here. It was a long kind of message, and I read it, and I was like, I jumped all over it. And by the way, this is where when you're indie, you can respond to something quick.
Yeah.
So I responded to that error, and I don't know how I overlooked it. A bunch of other people overlooked it. My betas overlooked it. Editor overlooked it. So all these things, like it just got overlooked.
Well,
and it happened for the Kindle version, not for like the print. It happened for the Kindle version. So it was just a formatting issue, and that's all it was. And which it did disrupt how the book flowed.
Wow.
So you couldn't. So because you have a paragraph break would help delineate a scene from another scene. Well, that break was somehow missed, and then it made it just read on as one long paragraph, and so it made it confusing and to the reader. I'm not sure. Like, wait a minute, I thought they were just outside. Now they're in the kitchen talking. That doesn't make any sense. Had there been a paragraph break there, you would have seen the break in the scene.
Yes.
And does it make sense?
Yep.
And so
cut and then boom.
she mentioned it. I fixed it. I like got on there. I thanked her, and I was like, "Hey, my next book is on you. That was amazing. Thank you for." So I love when I get someone to respond to me in a respectful way.
Yeah.
And providing they saw something. I mean, they're not out to damage me. They're out to help me.
Yeah.
And so instead of going on and leaving a bad review, she messaged me personally, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, that is cool. So, I know we're getting kind of to the end of the interview, which I'm sad about. But I did have to say,
He actually has a tear right now.
right? A little. It is. It's so what? I'm a crier. But so I have good news.
Feel free to take that picture home with you then.
No, you don't want to know what happens. The pictures that go to his house.
So I have good news, bad news, good news, bad news. So the good news is I actually bought your first book, The End, and I didn't. But the bad news is I haven't read it. I haven't read it. And so,
But you bought it.
But I bought it. But the good news is that I haven't read any books. So it's not like I'm just like, I'm not going to read his book right now. I'm going to read somebody else's book. I just haven't had time to read any books. But the bad news is it makes me sad because I'm not reading. So that's my good, bad, good, bad.
Good, bad.
So,
Well, I'll tell you what. I read The Day of Reckoning, and the reason I chose that one, I mentioned that to my Facebook audience because you have the dedication, G, to law enforcement in that one. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to buy this book. I'll read this one. It's got the dedication to it. I can promote this to people. And I read it. I had a trip out west and back, and I got the book done. Between both legs of that plane trip, the book was done. So it was a quick read. I guess, like I said, like, it left me wanting more. Like, I felt like, man, this could be a whole TV series. And the way The Walking Dead is going, which is pretty crappy these days.
Yeah.
Well, I'd rather see The Day of Reckoning.
Well, we didn't even talk that he's a military veteran.
He is a military veteran.
So
I got in big trouble confusing the terms boot camp and basic training recently because some Marines wanted to stick their boots where the sun don't shine because I said Army boot camp instead of Army basic training. And Marines, like, they really want you to call it boot camp if it's Marines,
So what? So what is your? So you're a military veteran. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I know it translates to your book, and I know we don't have much time, but and we probably should have done this way earlier. Obviously, like I said, we keep talking.
That's your fault.
Like everybody else knows him. So can you tell us just a little bit about? Your background, because that's what's going to help us or the new readers understand kind of where you're coming from and how your writing style is what it is.
Well, yeah, I'm a vet, but the history kind of goes in my family goes further back. Like my father was a Marine Corps veteran, and then he was in law enforcement for over 20 years as a Maryland State Trooper. My brother was in law enforcement, federal law enforcement. So that kind of serving our country kind of is ingrained in my family. And my other brother is an Air Force veteran, so it's kind of ingrained in our family. So I just, I skipped becoming a law enforcement officer and went directly into becoming a Marine, kind of following my father's footsteps right out the gate. And then did 6 years there. And then from there, I just kind of, after being in the Marine Corps, I jumped as a commercial diver for a couple of years, and then did about 10 years as an executive protection agent.
Oh, okay.
Dang,
then,
he's like Jason Bourne.
He is Jason Bourne.
Holy crap. So, man, now I want to know, like, when you did the diving thing, was that like building structures underwater, or what was that?
Yeah, so I worked for a company called American Oilfield Divers out of Houston, and in a nutshell, it's just being an underwater construction worker. But don't let people fool you. It's not what it's cracked up to be. Like you go to commercial diving school for about 6 months, and then you get a diploma from the school, and then you end up being you're holding hose. You're a tender. You start in the industry as a tender.
You said holding
and
hose.
You're just a grunt, just doing all the work for the actual divers.
Right.
So I did that for about 2 years. I did break out as a diver eventually, but again, I was a junior diver, just mainly doing menial stuff under the water. I wasn't doing all the cool stuff. But I got out of it. I almost got killed off the Trinity River outside of Houston. And I was like, God, I'm making $12 an hour, and almost got sucked into a pipeline. I don't think this job
$12 an
works.
hour.
Jeez, I seriously, you just about made me faint thinking $12 an hour. I cannot even
$12 an hour for
fathom
that? No.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Commercial divers don't make a lot of money unless you're doing what they call saturation or sat divers. They make a lot of money. And I think the concept where people think commercial divers make a ton of money is specifically offshore divers you go out on a boat or a dive boat, or you work on a platform, and you're out there for 30 or 45 days straight. So everything's taken care of for you. You're getting fed and everything. And then you come back, you got this big fat check. And then of course you're living in, typically living in like Louisiana or kind of like East Texas. You're not living high on the hog, believe me. You're not, it's not all that. It's not all it's cracked up to be.
Man.
$12 an hour.
That's crazy.
I made $11 an hour when I first started in Detroit.
Yeah, they're making $11.25 to start in the academy in Flint right now.
Boom, see?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Practically rich, even back then.
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh my gosh.
Well, dude, I appreciate you coming back and giving us a second chance, even though we screwed up the whole first interview.
Even though
audio.
Mike didn't deserve it.
No, thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it. You guys are always fun to talk to.
Yeah, it's the whiskey. It's not us.
Yeah, for sure. It's a whiskey talking.
You
look delicious. I can tell you that right now. I'm looking at that picture. Wow.
So what we're gonna do is when we post this in our Patreon and when we post this on YouTube, we'll figure out some kind of clip for YouTube. Then we will link to your main author page, and then we'll link to the work on Amazon, and hopefully that sends some people your way and exposes them to what you're doing. And I look forward to more conversation even off air, because I have some more questions about publishing and certain things that in your experience with that maybe would go beyond what our audience would be directly interested in, but certainly something I think both Dave and I have some questions offline too for that. So I appreciate it.
I'm available.
You have anything? You can have the last words. Anything for your fans? Anything for your haters? You're like, yeah, screw you.
No, just thanks, guys, for having me on. I always appreciate it. So maybe next time when the next book comes out.
Sounds good. I'm pretty sure we were besties in a past life because you're hilarious. So.
But next time what needs to happen is you need to fly out here so you can be in studio with us.
On your dime, of course.
Yes.
Oh, I thought you guys were all. I thought I'm going to be on scholarship.
We'll send a limo for you.
I will have my son in his 2009 Kia Rio pick you up, and from the airport, you can stay in my basement, and which doesn't have a TV at the moment, but like we said, media's changing. You can watch it on your phone.
That's right. You stream everything now.
So we'll definitely.
As long as it has Wi-Fi, baby.
There you go.
We've got Wi-Fi. We got that. All right, brother. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right, guys.
Take care.
All right, see you, man.
See ya.
Dude, he's just hilarious, man.
Yeah, he's a fun guy to talk to.
God, he is. It's amazing how.
Recording right now?
Yeah, we're recording.
Oh, but here we are, so like idiots.
We're kind of wrapping this up, and you just stop recording.
I did stop recording.
Oh.
I thought you were done. I thought.
How fuck are we done? We didn't even.
Now we're recording again.
The last words.
So now we're recording.
Are
again?
we recording right now?
So we were recording. We stopped recording.
Okay, everything's about to die.
You're about to die.
Your mom's
I'm
about
just
to
kidding.
die.
You're not about to die.
That's not nice.
He's about to die.
Okay, listen. The bottom line is, yeah, he's a great guy. Whether you like his writing,
hilarious.
whether you don't like his writing,
he's
down to earth.
Oh my gosh, he's awesome.
Legit, just trying to make it.
Yep.
Dave's camera's about to die.
Okay.
You're about to die.
All right. Everybody's gonna die.
Everyone's gonna.
Oh, I probably peaked the microphone there. Holy.
Die.
Peter Brady moment.
I know,
Okay.
die.
All right. Okay, come on, Marsha. All right. Goodbye.
Bye.